The eraser tool and its subtools, the scissor tool and the knife tool, provide you with various methods of erasing, dissecting and slicing paths to form new shapes. We'll look at the eraser tool first. I'm just going to go ahead and select it from the Tools panel. You can also select it by clicking Shift+E on your keyboard. I've got a document open here with a variety of paths, both open and closed, so we can see how the eraser tool behaves. So first up, let's see what the eraser tool does to an open path. When I have the eraser tool selected, my mouse icon becomes a crosshair with a circle around it. The size of this circle determines the size of the area to be erased. I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag my mouse over the line of this open path. You can see that a small section of my path has been erased. If I hold down the Control key to switch to my selection tool, you can see that I now have two separate paths. Now watch what happens if I erase part of a closed path. It has now created two separate closed paths. Whenever you use the eraser tool, it is in effect cutting away a section, forming new paths and shapes from the pieces that remain. Now you'll notice that I didn't have to have my objects selected in order to erase them. However, watch what happens when I select a particular path and not the other. Although I dragged my eraser over both paths, only the selected path was affected. So if no paths are selected, the eraser will erase any path it touches. However, if one or more paths are selected, unselected paths are protected. There are also certain objects within Illustrator that by default cannot be erased with the eraser tool. Text objects are one of them. Watch what happens if I run my eraser over this text object. In the preview, it looks like the area is being deleted. However, when I release my mouse, you can see that the text remains unaffected. This is because a text object is not really a path. If I want to be able to erase text, I first need to transform the text into editable paths. To do this, I select the text object, and then I go to Object and Expand. Make sure the object box is checked and then click OK. You can now see that each character is made up of path segments and anchor points. It is no longer editable with the text tool, but has become like any other path, meaning I can now erase a section of it. So far, we've just used the default eraser, which is a small round nib. However, we can actually change the size and shape of this nib, as the eraser tool is a bit like a calligraphy brush. If I double click on the eraser tool in the tool panel, I can open up the eraser options and we can change the settings. I'm going to decrease the roundness, change the angle, and then increase its size. And then I'll click OK. You can now see my eraser tool is much bigger and a different shape. So let's go ahead and erase a path again to see the effect. I can also increase and decrease the eraser size using the bracket keys on my keyboard. Now let's move on to the scissor tool. I'm just going to close and reopen my document so we've got a few paths and shapes to use again. You can find the scissor tool underneath the eraser tool in the Tools panel. You can also just press C on your keyboard. We use the scissor tool to split a path either at an anchor point or anywhere along a path segment. Just hover over the path until it turns blue and then click once where you would like to split it. I can now hold down Control to activate my selection tool, and you can see the path is now split into two separate pieces. So whereas the eraser tool can erase an entire section, the scissor tool just does a clean single cut. When I cut an open path, I only need to click or cut once to divide a path in two. On a closed path, I need to cut twice if I want to cut the object in two. First, watch happens if I just do one cut. With my direct selection tool, I will just move that newly created anchor point. The path has been split, but I still have one object. I will now do the same thing again, but this time I'm going to click twice. Cutting a path in two places gives me two separate objects. When you split a path in two, each newly separate path will inherit the settings such as stroke weight from the original path. The scissor tool has the same restraints as the eraser tool when it comes to symbols and text objects. These objects will need to be expanded before you can cut their paths. The final tool in the set is the knife tool. Let's select it from the Tools panel. The knife tool allows you to slice a path or an object along a line that you draw by dragging the mouse. So let's go ahead and do that to one of my closed path objects. You can see that the object has been split in two, cutting along the exact line I dragged my mouse. I can also constrain the slice to be a straight line by holding down the Alt key before I click and drag the mouse. If I want to constrain that straight line vertically, horizontally or at a 45-degree angle, I can hold down the Shift key as well as the Alt key. And that's it, folks. We're done with erasing, splitting and slicing paths.